All right, men, welcome back to the Manhood Tribe show. And we are continuing in our series where we are talking about men at work and just how we deal with all of the things related to work. And I want to ask you guys if you have ever really wondered what it looks like to bring your faith into the workplace. For those of us who are men of faith, that probably is a question that we ask ourselves from time to time, and especially try to think along the lines of, is it just about like doing good things with the money that we make or sharing your faith with your coworkers? Or is there something really more to it than that? Well, I'm excited about our guest today who is going to help us think a little bit more along those lines and give us, I think, a better picture of what it means to be a man of faith at work. Or even if you're not a man of faith, how to really think about what does it look like for people who are that to have their faith be something in the workplace that can actually be a good thing for everybody else. So my guest today is a guy named Brian Gray. Really glad that you're here on the show, Brian. Brian is the Vice President of Formation at Denver Institute for Faith and Work, leading the 5280 Fellowship, Praxis Labs Partnership, and some professional groups working on civic and industry issues in Denver. His vocation includes moving good ideas into a more meaningful life through reflection, relationships, and conversation. He also happens to be my brother-in-law. So really glad to have you here today on the show, Brian. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here. This is going to be a classic evidence of nepotism for your listeners. You just got like the family hack to come in here and talk shop.
Absolutely. But when you got good family, you need to take advantage of it, right? So why not?
We'll see. We'll proofs in the pudding. It's good to be with you. Good talking about this.
Absolutely. Okay, man. Well, hey, let's just start off. Why don't you tell us a little bit of like what is the Denver Institute for Faith and Work, and just tell us more about what y'all do.
Yeah, Denver Institute, based on the city tag, we are in the front range of Denver, Colorado. We do most of the things here in local. We also have some national facing expressions to serve people in other cities. Our hope, basically the problem that we recognize is that people have a pretty anemic, thin vision for what work could look like, the topic that you set up with the question. In terms of how faith can inform work, it could be a positive motivation towards your contribution to a workplace or to your city. So we have anything from a couple of major events every year for professional women or for business leaders. I run a leadership development fellowship. We have the Faith and Work podcast, which is one that we host here. So a number of different resources just to help people be thinking about the what should be the natural integration of two things that are deeply important to us.
Yeah.
So been around for about 10 years, and I've been here originally on a founding board and then have come on staff since.
Tell me, like, what are people hoping to get out of their time, with and around your organization? What does it look like to kind of go through, one of your cohort groups or a workshop or whatever? Like, what do you come out on the other side feeling better about?
Yeah, well, it's as varied as the people who show up. So my guess is that maybe I could answer that in terms of what are some of the common tensions or sticking points that people have around this idea of faith and work integration. And I bet you they'd be really common to most of your listeners. So we'll hear from people. People feel a pretty strong sense of social isolation within their workplace.
Like because of their faith.
They'll say, I don't know any other fill in the blank believers in my company or industry. Yeah. Fill in the blank could be serious. They could be committed. Or maybe I know some Christians that are great Christians, but they just don't take the excellence of their craft and their workplace really seriously. So people find themselves isolated from either great at my job people or committed to my faith people, and they don't know those two together. So we hear that from people a lot.
Yeah.
Another kind of problem we have, people who come in with a purpose question. I want to know the larger purpose that God might have for this thing that I'm spending. And mathematically, this is the case. 50% of my conscious hours are going towards one thing.
Yeah.
If I'm not asleep during a given week, I want to know what God cares about it, that he cares about it, what he has to say about it, how it informs how I go about my work. That's another pretty common one. And then the one that really gets a lot of my interest is we have a lot of Christians that will show up wanting to offer a different type of faithful public presence through their work or through their career. They're Christians who want to be known for love and some tangible expressions. They want to be a part of, they might recognize, hey, Christianity oftentimes has a reputation issue in my company or in my industry. And I want to be kind of excellent at what I do and be a kind of a positive representation of Jesus, but also of professionalism.
Yeah.
So those are the types of issues that people mostly show up to our programming with. And then our hope is to through spiritual formation or some practices they can take into the workplace that might even be like executive coaching, like tools, or through convening and connecting people in meaningful relationships inside their industry, that they'll go back in with some new motivations, some new practices, and some new ways to think about what it looks like to do their job with both faith-based and career-based excellence.
Yeah. I think that's great, man. I think I think most of us in America, especially, who would say that we're followers of Jesus and are trying to take that to some degree seriously, run up against this challenge of how do I take it seriously in my workplace? Whether they're in a workplace where their faith is really kind of like, if not outright like they feel like people are hostile to it, it's at least maybe kind of like a keep that to yourself sort of thing. So I think a lot of us just kind of struggle with that idea of what is it? How would I even do that? What does that even begin to look like? But I kind of want to ask. I kind of teased it at the beginning of the episode, and you kind of talked about it too. I'm just kind of curious, like, how did we get to this place where kind of the prevailing idea of faithfulness at work gets reduced to just like, sharing my faith with my coworkers, or I'm not doing anything like illegal or unethical, in the way that I do my job. Like,
don't steal the pencils.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about
Yeah.
Jesus.
How did it get reduced to that?
By the way, younger listeners, pencils are these things with wood. They've got lead, and we used to write on paper. There's a, let's just be fast and kind of bullet points, but I think that there's two stories. There's a faith-based story that gets us to that, and there's a cultural story that gets us to that.
Okay.
Let's start on the faith-based story. If you just think about the roots of Christianity and the movement of Jesus, it comes out of, it's really a kind of a sect of Judaism at the very beginning. And Judaism has some things that are on limits and off limits. You can eat these foods, you can't eat these. You can dress this way, you can't dress this way. Then in the Greek culture that Christianity in the New Testament is growing through, they also have this kind of sacred and secular divide, if you will. So it's just a way, kind of a phrase. So certain things are really important, other things are less important. So if you're a philosopher spewing ideas on the steps of Rome, that's very high and noble and lofty. But if you were the stonemason who installed those steps, that's considered a lower type of work. And so we've got these two different divisions between what's secular sacred, or what's important, or what's spiritually significant. And those things just trot right into Christian thinking if we are not careful historically. The cultural side is that if you just think about our dollar bill, it says in the founding of our country, it says there's a message written across the top of any of our paper money that says, "In God we trust." Or on our coinage. So Christianity used to be considered a public good. And then most of us have run into that version of, let's say we're talking to somebody about our own faith, or, hey, I was at church this Sunday, and they say, well, what's good for you is good for you. What's good for me is good for me. So now the statement is, Christianity used to be historically in our country viewed as a public good. Then it's like, well, it's a private good. That's fine for you. And I'd say that the reputation problem culturally for Christians now is that it's considered, the question is this a public bad? In other words, are the ethics that you have, or the views that you hold problematic? Regardless of your political take and what you thought about the first Trump election, the big message was, those Christians did this to us. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican or a political independent, and I am. The message was, the problem with this president came from the Christians. That's just all it is a super interesting statement of, there's a reputation problem. So I think as a net result, Christians are just left with, well, then how do I make these things work? Because I got these divides. I got a cultural divide, right? I got this faith divide. And in most churches, to be frank, I was a pastor for 13 years. I know you've pastored. Most churches aren't talking about work as a significant place for discipleship, worship, public mission. So that divide just gets continued Sunday after Sunday. And so what are we left with? Well, be a good person. I know I'm supposed to be a good person, so I'll just apply that at work. Be ethical. Don't steal stuff. Apply that at work. I know I'm supposed to talk to people about Jesus, so do that at work. But
that's all you got.
That's all you got. Yeah, it's a really instrumental. It just makes your work just kind of an instrument to get to the good stuff of Christianity. And it's a too small story.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that, and even would say, I think actually, like in becoming a pastor and kind of getting into ministry work, a part of that was coming up in a culture that tended to talk a little bit like if you're I don't know that I ever heard this directly, but it was kind of like in the air, so to speak, that it was like if you're gonna take your faith seriously, the way to do that is actually to do it full time. Like you need to go into some kind of
You only
vocational.
heard that. You only heard that indirectly.
Yeah.
You never had anyone directly tell you that.
Not
No, real.
directly,
No
no.
question.
I think
Okay.
it kind of got danced around as much as you possibly could without saying it directly.
Yep.
But there definitely was that sense of like people who are really serious about their faith do it by making it into their career, and and it just kind of left, I think, people who wanted to be serious about their faith but weren't interested in being in ministry feel less than, kind of like secondary. Like
Oh
my
yeah.
career doesn't actually matter to God, but I know I matter to God. So I'm going to try to do all of the Christian things in my very, secular workplace environment. And hopefully that's how he will approve of me. And there's something just really like inherently, I think I know that there's something wrong with that, but it's hard to put a finger on like, why that's
Oh,
wrong and what else
it's
is
that is the
there.
poison.
Yeah.
That's the poison in the water.
Yeah.
It's like it is a very prevailing. The reason I asked the question is if you'd ever heard that directly is because I did.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was a pretty solid Christian kid. People said, "Oh, you should consider being a pastor." It's like, I don't want to be a pastor. Being a pastor is for people who don't know what to do with their lives. Like that, this is my honest take. Well, true story, Don. I'm at this little university in the SEC called the University of Texas
Mm-hmm.
for grads. I don't know if you've ever heard of it,
I haven't
but anyway,
actually.
yeah,
Must be kind of a small school. Yeah.
it's cute. Yeah, it's a cute small school. This is our SEC rivalries coming out. So anyway, I was at the University of Texas, and I was doing I got my degree in applied heart research. The research I'm doing over at the university, and then the work I'm doing and running the lab after I graduated, would be to help Black and Latino populations receive enhanced cardiovascular care through our local hospital system. They have different genetic and exercise and dietary responses than most of the traditionally Anglo population that have been studied so far. So we're basically trying to advance, if you will, we're trying to advance medical justice on behalf of these populations. Nobody at my church applauds for this.
Yeah.
Like nobody
Yeah.
knows to say, oh my gosh, if God looks at the world of medicine, he would want that.
Right.
What a great thing you're doing. But when I volunteer in the college group, and I did, and I would preach on Sunday mornings, and I did, and I would lead 2 small group Bible studies of college guys, and I did, and when I would run their short-term ministry trips, oh my gosh, metaphorically speaking,
Yeah.
everyone would applaud. And they said, you should be a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a pastor, and I loved it, and it was a good fit, but I could have been a God-honoring, people-serving public Christian in cardiovascular medicine just as sacredly.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. That's really good perspective. Okay, so keep that going then. Like, take us there into like whatever you need to say to be able to do this for us. But give us the bigger vision then. If it's not just simply about sharing my faith at work, or using 10% of my income to tithe to the church, or whatever. If it's not just simply about those kind of baseline things, what does faithful Christian living look like in the workplace?
Yeah. I mean, even as we talk about this, what I want to be careful about, and I know you and I both believe this, there's not a minute of time spent in financial generosity or loving a person who doesn't yet know Jesus and friendship that's wasted. Like that's super important. So don't hear us taken away from that.
Right. Those are the wrong things to do, but yeah.
If it's the only story for my work, it's insufficient for the whole gospel.
Yeah.
So the fast is, I could tell you the gospel, if you will, in 2 chapters. An individual has sinned and an individual is forgiven by Jesus, personal salvation. Okay. Totally fits. The gospel has to be that to be legitimate. But the Bible unfolds a bigger story where there was this original created intent for the world. And right out of the gates in Genesis 1, we have people made in the image and likeness of God. And all we know about God up to that point is this God was at work and made people in his image and likeness. So you've got a created intent, and you've got human rebellion. We call it the fall. And that keeps on going through the brokenness that I bring into my workplace and the systems that I create. But then in the life with Christ, it says he's redeeming all things in Colossians 1. And all things is a super, super technical phrase in Greek, and it means all things.
All of them.
Like literally. So therefore the brokenness in my workplace, or if I've got a dysfunctional team that has communication issues, or if I've got disequity in what women are paid in my industry versus what men are paid. Or if I look out and I realize that there are some ethnic or other types of biases that are influencing some of the way that the supply chain is interacted with. All of these things are brokennesses that Jesus would want the Christian in her or his trade to care about in those
Yeah.
places, because he's in fact redeeming all things. So I think that larger story means, okay, now I go to work and I view half of my life is spent, right? Half my waking hours are spent in a place, and that is the life with God. So it's a place for my prayer. I mean, look, I'm not getting paid to pray, right? If I'm in medical sales, no one's confused. If I'm the public school vice principal, I'm not getting paid in the public school to pray. But we bring the life of prayer to that. We bring the life of our own spiritual maturity and growth to that place. We become a person of who's working to create healthy relationships, seeking the flourishing of other people around us. And if they want to talk about Jesus, we're also willing to do that. But here's the deal. There's one of my favorite parables or stories. Jesus heals 10 lepers in the Bible. How many of the 10 lepers come back and make any type of spiritual response towards Jesus? One.
Yeah, just one.
So is he wasting his time on the 9, or was he doing what brought their flourishing or their healing or a wholeness to them physically? And we say, yeah, it was. And so both of those are in play, that for a Christian to attend to the common good in her workplace or his workplace is really important, as well as being fiscally generous, as well as talking about Jesus, as well as the way I'm being formed to be a more ethical person who loves and honors God in every activity of my life.
Yeah, that's really good. I think for me, as somebody who has been in vocational ministry and now for the past, several years has been on the outside of that, kind of seeing the difference. Like, I think one of the things that I've really encountered is, when I worked in vocational ministry, it was really easy, like almost kind of to take it for granted that the work that I'm doing is valuable because, it feels like it has spiritual meaning. And now being in a corporate work environment, there's a little bit of loss to that, of kind of like from a faith standpoint. Does what I'm doing really even matter? And there's days where, if I'm being honest, there's days that I go to work and I'm like, this does not matter. Who is this benefiting? No one. Why am I doing this? And so, like, how would you speak to that? How would you speak to the person who is kind of wrestling with, the guy who's showing up to work every day feeling like I'm earning a paycheck. I'm doing right by, my family or my future or whatever. But I just don't see how what I'm doing is actually of any meaning, value, purpose, whatever.
Yep. That's a really common challenge that a lot of people face. First thing, even people who are in occupational ministry, you in the past or me working in a faith-based nonprofit, we face it.
Yeah.
So I face it all the time. I'll get done with a 45-hour work week and I'll say, I know I worked my butt off. What did I actually do?
Yeah.
What did I accomplish? And here I am, like leading, spiritually integrating practices into the way our nonprofit operates and doing leadership development. So just know that it's a common.
I felt the same way working at a church. It was like, oh yeah, we had plenty of meetings that could have been emails at the church.
Ask any pastor. Go, guys, if you're listening, go ask your pastor how they've ever experienced this. And anyone who's honest will tell you that it's an aspect of their work. And in part because work is imperfect and we're imperfect.
Yeah.
So there's going to always
just
be
because we started the meeting with a prayer didn't make the meeting good.
Yeah. I mean, we're in a meeting. The meeting has no agenda and I'm already losing my mind. I was like, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
So
look,
true. Yeah.
Work can be bad in a lot of ways, but I'd say to the specifics, the thing that, let's think in 3 categories for any single one of us. And I want to suggest in any type of work that's not just overtly sinful, right? So you can't work for the Dallas Cowboys and honor God, for instance. Like everybody, or you can't, you pick,
anything that involves cats.
I'm not. We got to come up with a whole bunch of one. But kind of joking aside, like a hitman for Jesus isn't a career. So let's carve off the straw man. Anything that's overtly sin, stick it over there. Any other thing that's not explicitly sin can either be done to the glory of God, to the love and service of other people, and as a part of my own formation, just as much as anything in quote unquote occupational ministry. So we can talk about work as my growth, sanctification, holiness, whatever. We can talk about work as my public mission in service of other people. And we can talk about work as my actual worship of God. So I'd say for the purpose, let's pick something that would feel like it has no purpose. Waiting tables. I pick it because I used to wait tables. I used to feel like I could wait tables very sacredly and in a way with a ton of spiritual significance. And also I could do it like any old run of the mill person who checks his faith at the door,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I can go up to this table of young folks. I can upsell them on a bottle of wine that they might not be able to afford, but I get a little bit bigger tip. Or I could say, hey, you know what? That $60 bottle of Cabernet is so good. You made a good choice. But that $42 bottle of Cabernet is unbelievable. And you save 20 bucks. And these kids light up. I think that's a way that I can actually serve clients at a table, that I can practice hospitality, that I can offer generosity to others. And I'm just selling a bottle of wine in an Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
So the material activity of what people do in their job isn't what makes something important to God or not. It's how we go about doing what we do, why we go about doing it, how we see that as a way to serve other people relationally around us, and I also think through the quality of the product we create.
Yeah.
So there's a few different ways to approach that. Depends on people's industry.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's the kind of the crux of the matter for me, is being able to recognize that, like, the way I go about my work is a big component of what matters to God. You know, it's not the only thing, right? My work actually is valuable in and of itself. I'm contributing in some way to the good of society, to the flourishing of other people. Those things are valuable to Him. It's part of what He has created us for. But the way I go about my work is probably what's going to impact the people around me far more than the actual work that I'm doing. And that's what really matters to His heart, and we see it all over His creation, and all over the way that Jesus came and displayed, what it looked like to interact with people. It wasn't just the things that He was doing; it was the way that He was doing them. So yeah, I think you're hitting it right on. I know for me that was such kind of a turnaround moment for me in terms of understanding, like, the value of work, that God actually cared about work itself. And that it wasn't just as long as you were doing spiritual work, then that was good. But that any work that is meant to benefit other humans is good work. That's what He's designed us for. And so we can and should find meaning and purpose in that, and figuring out how to explore that. So I think that's great.
Well, this whole starting narrative is farming, like the original example of this.
Yeah.
So we're in Genesis 1, and so far we just have God at work creatively, like first 25 verses of Genesis, God's at work creating. For anyone else who's a Hebrew, all the other countries around them in the ancient Near East, none of their gods worked. Like, that would be a ridiculous sentiment. They all played and they made jokes about humans, and humans existed to serve the deities, right? But in that Christian, like Genesis 1, let's skip the dinosaurs for a minute. It's actually not written as a science manual. It's written as what we would call an apologetic, or a defense to answer who is God and what are people for.
Yeah.
Who's God? What are people for? This God works. He made people in His image, and the very first thing they're supposed to do is create and to cultivate and to make more. Look, I made all these different things. Now, farm, tend the garden, till it, cultivate it, make more of it, and we can kind of keep extrapolating. Write beautiful code. Have a spreadsheet that's clear and understandable and executes what you're supposed to do. Like, pour the cement cleanly in between the form boards.
Yeah.
Educate the rowdy first grade kid with patience and love. Like, human beings, the context was, and God blessed them, Genesis 1:26, and said, be fruitful, create, cultivate. So the context of giving of work is blessing right out of the gates. And the first work is farming, not pastoring. It's farming. It's not nonprofit guy, right? It's agronomy right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So.
No, yeah, I think that's great. I remember having a conversation with a college student one time not too long ago, just kind of talking about, he was doing some DoorDash driving or something on the side, and so we were kind of talking about that, and he was kind of bemoaning like all that he had to do with to be able to get to where he wanted to go, but this DoorDash thing was just for now, and I just said like, well, like, I know it's not what you want to do for forever, but like, God does care about how you do your DoorDash driving. Like, the fact that you show up on time with somebody's order, like, is a blessing to them. That, you know, that's what they're hoping for and anticipating. And the fact that you do that and do it well, like, it's a blessing to them. They're maybe not going to thank you for it. They might give you a bigger tip, but it is a blessing to them. And the way that you go about that with that attitude is the way that you honor God in your work, and that He finds pleasure in what you do because you're doing it well. You know, so just that conversation was, I think, a little bit mind blowing for him. But I remember how mind blowing that was for me too. Of first kind of realizing that, because just no one had taught me that God cares about the way that we do our work. So,
well, we had, like, to the table waiting. It's not just a cute example. I actually really liked waiting tables. I put myself through grad school twice waiting tables, and so I had this significant moment of conviction. If you've ever waited tables, you know what side work is. Side work is we take the silverware, we roll the napkins around, or we set the table. And usually, if there's 5 of us who are waiting tables, we go do the side work to set the tables in the whole restaurant, particularly in fine dining. Well, Don, when I'm doing that in my section, I'm going to have 6 tables in this restaurant. So I'm putting the fork straight, the knife straight, the spoon, everything is like high and tight. And then I go over to someone else's section. I'm like, just schlocking it out. Just like, okay, I got the fork and knife and the spoon on their table, because it's everybody's responsibility to then come back in and double check their section. So in other words, I'm taking care of number 1, and my section is high and tight, and I do just the minimum barrier of entry. Like, look, silverware and plates are on your table. Take care of it. And I had a serious moment of conviction. I'm not going to say that like the Lord spoke to me when I was waiting tables, but I mean, dang, felt a little close. And it was the words of Scripture from 1 Corinthians, and all you do it all to the glory of God. And I'm sitting here, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, when I'm in someone else's like section, wiping the lady's lipstick off the wine glass on someone else's table so that their guests have a good experience. I was like, yeah, that actually how I do what I do. Waiting tables, wiping lipstick off a glass under the glory of God is in all you do.
Yeah.
So you're right on this. You're right on with the DoorDash guy.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. Okay. So what would you, what do you do, and what does Denver Institute do to help folks be able to put that into practice in their workplace? Like, I know you talked about just, you know, spiritual disciplines or things like that.
Yep.
How do you recommend, like, okay, here's what I can actually kind of tangibly do to help me be mindful of that, to be more faithful in the way that I'm participating in, you know, the work of God and the way that I do my work? What does that, you know, kind of practically look like?
You want to do a real fast exercise together that anybody who's listening could do about their work?
Yeah.
Great. Tell me, Dawn, about what's an activity that comes up as a regular part of your job. Like, there's some routine to it. It's clockwork. It's going to happen several times a week, or it's real frequent. Give me like 1 or 2 activities.
One would be, so I work in digital marketing right now. So one would be building new ad campaigns. I do a few of those every week. Another one, just probably more tedious, is like checking campaign performance. So like every day I've got, multiple campaigns I've got to run through and see how they're doing.
Let's take checking campaign performance. Before you go and do that, what are the potential responses you might have to the numbers you see that are in that campaign performance? Like, what are the possible results, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah. So if it's, on track or ahead, I'm like, great, moving on to the next. I put like very little effort into looking anymore at that campaign because it's doing what it's supposed to. If it's not, then it's like, okay, there's the initial like, this one's going to take more time. And then it's the process of figuring out, okay, what do I need to look at? I'm not going to start at the same place on every campaign. If I've looked at this one before, I'm probably not going to repeat the same steps. I'm going to try to figure out what can I do in addition to what I've already done. If it's something that I'm looking at kind of for the first time, I've got kind of a checklist of things that I, look at from the start. What do I need to inspect to see if it can be improved here? So, we have we call it our, optimization list. What are the things that I need to do to try to improve it? But yeah, there's definitely that initial like, okay, here we go.
So you just described in specific detail about your job what is in essence common to every single guy listening, which and it's about, did we get the truck loaded right? It's about, did we tick off this client in terms of delivering this report later on time? Whatever it is, there's indications of our performance that are all over any of our workplaces. So I'm going to just say, if for any listener, if you go take when there's some way that your job, because of your job description and what you get paid good money to do, or hopefully good money to do, When you're supposed to perform and you come into those experiences where either your performance worked or it didn't, or it was excelled or it's falling short, or it's something you got to like redo over again, what is a simple one sentence prayer that you can carry into that situation that comes up all the time? Here's one for the salespeople, like in sales. When I go to check the dashboard, I am not my number. Like, God is God. My sales quota is not. Those are like, I'm not my number. God is God. My sales quota is not.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many salespeople get hung on that because it's your performance. It's your revenue and income on the commissions. And so as you come in to go track those things, carrying a very simple, we would call this a breath prayer. It's a prayer that can be prayed silently. It can be often prayed on the inhale and on the exhale. Very simple thing. So when you develop a routine activity, it literally becomes like a call to prayer for you. It's like, what's the thing that I'm going to do to keep my attitude right, to be healthy in my way that I envision my work, and to respond to God well, regardless of how this campaign's going.
Yeah.
You just carry a silent breath prayer. That's like a simple activity. And we could talk about hacks, but like techniques or tools to bring that into a lot of different places.
Yeah.
But it basically is like, if you've ever heard the church bells ring in the village, they're a reminder that you're supposed to pray whenever the bells go.
Yeah.
This is like the everyday activities of your work can be like the church bell that calls you to prayer. So a real common one for me, when I would wake up in the middle of the night, I used to be our COO. So I was doing operations, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and think in spreadsheets.
I'm so
and I would
sorry.
just pray. My breath prayer was, good. I hate thinking in spreadsheets. Goodness. My work is to rest. Yours is to watch. Like in the middle of the night, it's God's on. I'm not. My work is to rest. Yours is to watch. So I am getting that spreadsheet out of my head. My work's to rest. Your work's to rest. I just had a breath prayer for whenever that came up and the gut spikes and I'm getting anxious. It's like, dude, my work is to rest. Your work is to watch. So a simple prayer. No one needs to know about it. You're not getting paid for it, but you are a faithful Christian integrating the everyday activities of your work with what's important to you in relationship with Jesus. So that's just one example of a lot of different ways we could talk about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that, and I think that's something I can put into practice tomorrow. Like an easy way of like, I am not my campaign's performance. I mean, that's such an identity statement. Just I'm going to start with God is God. I'm His son. Whatever the performance of this campaign looks like doesn't change any of that. Just really, really simple. So that's great. Okay, I do want to circle back to talking about sharing your faith at work, because I know I've bemoaned it a little bit because I think I think rightfully so. We've kind of reduced faithful Christian witness at work to just sharing my faith with my coworkers. But I do think that in a very genuine way, faithful Christians want to be able to share their faith with their coworkers. And I think at the moment, we have all kinds of obstacles for being able to do that, right? In some places, it's like expressly forbidden. In other places, it's just really frowned upon because, it makes some people feel uncomfortable. It's just kind of a taboo topic. And I think by and large, kind of like you mentioned, like the church provides us almost zero training in how to be able to do that effectively, to be able to bring up faith in a conversation with a coworker in a way that doesn't feel creepy or confusing or pressured or whatever. So I just kind of want to ask, like, do you have any suggestions on what are some ways that we can be a faithful witness for Christ in our work environment without doing it really poorly?
Without being the creepy person?
Yeah.
Here's how I describe the creepy person. The creepy person is the guy that like lurks behind the water cooler. Younger listeners, a water cooler is this thing that dispenses water when we used to go to an office. Okay. There's a creepy guy who like lurks behind the water cooler. It's like, oh, Dawn, I saw you just turned in your TPS reports, which reminds me of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be that cat. Yeah. Like nobody wants, and nobody at your work wants you to be that cat. Like, that guy is.
You see him come in and you just go the other way. Yeah.
No one wants to work with this. But let's just say, I think actually taking your work really seriously is an important one. Many times Christians are considered otherworldly, a little bit heavenly minded. They can just like what's important to them is spiritual stuff. And so actually, I think here in the mid 2020s, kind of post secularism and post modernity, being excellent at the craft of your work is evangelistic.
Yeah.
Lowercase e. Like a Christian who actually cares about the world, cares about people, cares about their work, is already in the early steps of evangelism, being and expressing good news. So, first of all, don't buy that secular sacred divide. Keep them integrated. The other thing is we want to think in terms of what it looks like for our faith to be really winsome on other people's terms. I found a way to do that is when I'm working with some other people in settings that aren't faith based, oftentimes we share outcomes, or we share values, or we share some things that might be motivated by my faith, but might not be motivated by theirs. An instance right now, I've been doing some work around affordable housing. So that puts me out in a policy space where because of my faith motivation, care for the poor, trying to bring housing justice to the widow, to the orphan, to the immigrant, these types of Old Testament kind of ideas. Well, that's my motivation, but I'm sitting across from an agnostic at best, a person who's got some animosity towards Christianity. Do you know what we agree on? Poor people ought to have a
Yeah.
house, and they should not be put over the racks at the cost of living
Right.
in our city. We need to create a possibility where those who have a little bit less on behalf of those who need, right? So she and I agree on something. We actually share common ground. So the way I want to be winsome about my faith is to say, let's work on what we share. Let's work on the good together.
Yeah.
But I want to strongly bring my own faith motivation to why I do what I do. But I'm curious, I want to know why you do what you do. So we can have a different why. We can agree on the what, and even a lot of times the how. And I think most people are perfectly accepting of that type of winsome Christianity. It's
Yeah.
like, well, look, I'm not into Jesus, and most Christians freak me out. But I like the ones like you who care about housing.
Yeah.
Where I like the ones, I remember in the restaurant, I keep going to the table waiting examples because I'm just trying to think, because I'm trying to be real specific in
Yeah.
the most
Yeah.
unlikely environment. My friend said, I don't like a lot of Christians. I remember this conversation. I don't like Christians, but I like you because you're a liberal. I'm like, oh, dude, I might be the most conservative
Yeah.
Christian. I was like, what do you mean by liberal? It's like, well, you're not mean.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. And there's the
only
reputation again,
barrier
right?
of
Yeah.
The only barrier of entry in evangelism at the Italian restaurant is don't be mean.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe she said this.
Yeah.
Literally from her mouth to my ears to the Lord's ears in prayer. Like, I can't help us not to be mean in the restaurant, Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think just being really winsome, and this is all before we ever start to talk about Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
be great at your job. Bring your why, your faith motivations behind your job to the workplace, because you're a whole person. Expect your colleagues to do the same, and honor and respect the differences in your why. Work towards a really killer what with an excellent how in the way that you care about people.
Yeah.
That's like all pre-evangelism.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so good. It reminds me of that kind of like old leadership axiom of people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, in the workplace, especially, they want to see that first you care about your job because, nobody likes to be on the team with the person who's not pulling their weight, right? Nobody does. Christian, non-Christian.
Dude, that group project is the worst group project.
100%. Don't be that guy. And especially like, just because everybody needs to pull their weight, but especially if you want to communicate something about your faith, whether or not you're pulling a weight communicates way more volume about your faith than anything you're going to say about Jesus later on down the road, right?
Big time.
Yeah. So I think you're just spot on, and that's such a healthy reminder for us as believers, to recognize that 9/10 of what we say about Christ is influenced by the way that we're living and acting the rest of the time. So super helpful. Okay, let me ask one last question, just because you guys are based in Denver. Probably most of the folks listening are not in Denver. So tell us a little bit about what the cohorts that you guys put together, what you do in those kinds of groups, and how could people in other places do something similar if there's not a Denver Institute of Faith and Work near them?
Yeah, let me give you a couple of things that could be kind of action points. So if you find yourself listening, you're like, I'm kind of interested in discipleship or faith growth opportunities that would relate to my work. I run in this city what's called the 5280 Fellowship. 5280 stands for 5,280 feet. which is the mile of elevation that Denver's at. So it's like a local moniker, right? It's a local slogan. So I run the 5280 Fellowship, which is an early to mid-career professional development, spiritual formation, and theology for work program. Okay. Well, you got to live in the Denver Front Range. You got to live like somewhere within an hour and a half of Denver. But on our website, 5280fellows.org, I listed 9 or 10 different cities at the bottom of our page where fellowships like that are happening in other cities. We have this big belief here at Denver Institute. We want to help grow fruit on one another's trees. So that's just, if something like that, being in a peer learning environment where elements of professional coaching meet my theology, meet faithful practices like the breath prayer thing we just went through, if something like that is of interest, I could give you a list of 12 cities where they're doing it around you. And they're on the website. So 5280fellows.com would list that. But we also have a few things that we do nationally, and we just take the Denver tag off of it because we don't want to serve people here. So our Faith and Work podcast has, a couple thousand listeners per episode, and they'll range anywhere from, right now we're in a series about faithful voices from the workplace. So we're just interviewing people in different industries. What's it look like to be a faithful artist? What's it look like to be faithful in high finance? What's it look like to be faithful in the energy sector? What's it like to be faithful in retail? And so we're just interviewing some folks, but we have a number of different things on our podcast that are like that. And then truly, what I generally say is it happens to us all the time. We love to make connections for people in other cities. And so, if people ever went to our website, denverinstitute.org, two things that you can find there. One, if you just hit our email, our generic email that goes to an inbox, hello@denverinstitute.org, say, hey, I'm in this city. You got anything for me? That gets routed to me. And I'll say, yep, you're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Oh, do I have the people that you need to meet? Oh, you're in Atlanta? This is the people, this is the org, these are the folks doing this kind of stuff. So don't be shy about reaching out, and we at that hello at email, and we'll make a connection. But the other thing is, if you go to our website or you just Google Denver Institute, God Loves Work, we just put together, it could be maybe a parting gift. We put together a free download, which is a couple of week devotional like activity to help people just think biblically or do some Bible study about or prayers for the nature of their work. So we produced one in previous year. We produced another one back for Labor Day earlier this year. So if you want to look back and you're looking to start any kind of new habits, new kind of practices around integrating things in your workplace, that's just a free resource you can go grab. The God Loves Work will be the Google search from our website that'll find
awesome. Yeah, and we'll put that in our episode show notes as well, so people can find the link there. But I think that's fantastic. I think just a simple kind of devotional to help people get started along this path. If this is something that you've kind of never given much thought to, that's a great starting point as a way to just be able to think about what does it look like to involve your faith in your work and to see your work as a place where you actually do practice your faith, even if that doesn't look like sharing your faith. Or just ethical business practices. There are ways for your work to be honoring to God, and I think that's the perfect start to it. Any closing thoughts on faith and work, or SEC college football, or Liverpool, or craft beer?
Boy, you're hitting my sweet spots. I'm going to grant people that Arch Manning might be overrated, but we'll just see how that all works out in that story. We won't talk about Liverpool football because we're going to go win the Premiership again. But here's the parting thing I want to leave with the listeners. I am 100% guaranteed the only listener to Manhood Tribes who has seen the host in his pajamas on Christmas morning.
I don't know. I think my mom is probably listening somewhere. So,
all right. Well, great. Me and Juju, though, we've both seen Don in his pajamas on Christmas morning. So I just want to say, what a distinct honor it is for me to have seen the checker plaid Christmas pants.
Yeah, there you go.
They're a
special treat.
Yeah, they're a treat.
Well, dude, thanks so much for being on the show today. It's been really good talking to you. Guys, I hope this has been super helpful to you in the ways that you think about your workplace and your faith and how to incorporate the two of those things. Go check out our show notes for any links from the episode to be able to help you get started. And Brian, it's good to see you as always, man.
You as well.
All right. See you guys.